What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Soccer Wise on a glorious Monday, a championship Monday for multiple teams involved. We have a lot to go over. We have a lot to talk about, and we are back together. David Goss and Tommy Scoops with you. Joe Lowry didn't step into my place. He probably excelled in place of me on Thursday, one of the best in the business. But I'm back, Tom. Do you feel so warm and cozy?
I do feel warm and cozy whenever you're around, and like my body just like it's like I know philosophically that you are back in the greater New York City area, in the East Coast, in the tri-state area, and my body just is just like, hey, like the different synergy and saying things like WFAN jokes and the sports area just naturally. And by way of hello, we're just like, oh, wait, you didn't want to answer the phone when I called you on the first time? You had to wait for me to call a second time? That was our hello this morning.
You could feel the shift in the energy, the atmosphere, that slight change, that slight altering. I'm in a place with apples. We've got fall apples, which is like arguably the best. Fall's the best season, right? I had this fight with Megan Klingenberg.
I agree.
Okay, thank you.
I agree.
And
I'm somebody who lives on the beach, and I think fall's the best season.
I didn't know it was debatable. I was unaware that existed in the world. Like, I didn't know that there was a different viewpoint possible.
Well, it's because places like your tropical rainforest of South Florida, plus exotic zoo animals that have been kidnapped and brought to the area, there is no fall.
But here's the funny thing is, like, so Publix, and if you want to sponsor us, Publix, feel free to send me a message. Just hit us up at SoccerWise. They're doing holiday-themed ice cream flavors, and it's all like fall and Christmas flavors, and you're like, none of this is relevant to your life. You don't.
Yeah.
You're not going heavy cinnamons and chais and all this stuff because it's not relevant to you. I am back in the Northeast, which is the home of champions. It turns out it is the home of Shield-elphia, the Philadelphia Union, the 2025 Supporter Shield winners. It is the home of Hartford Athletic, the 2025 Jägermeister Cup winning champions in the USL Championship. They went to Sacramento and knocked off Sacramento Republic, who we did an awesome interview with last Friday with Todd Donovan. I would highly recommend still going to listen to that. It was a few minutes about the game. It was mainly big picture. He is a president, GM. He sits on the sporting committee in USL. We talked about youth development. We talked about stadium building. We talked about future First Division, Pro Rel, all of that in between. It is also home to the 2025 Abu Dhabi preseason game champions, New York Knickerbockers.
Let's go.
Stuffed Philadelphia 76ers. Get stuffed. What's funny is I was going to come on and talk about the Knicks, and then you came on wearing the hat, and I'm like, well, now it's happening. This is all I have to let. My dad turned to me yesterday after the Jets. I got here and after the Jets, and he goes, so all we have is the Knicks, right? And I was like, that's all we need.
That's all we need.
It's all we need. Shit was rough, and now we have the Knicks, and that is the nature of it. But I didn't realize it was all in the Northeast until we started rolling through that. I guess it is the dominant region, dominant region of the world. Feel free to get back to us if you think a different region of the world has more value than the Northeast, but I find it hard to believe.
Yeah, I knew the Knicks hat was coming on today. And again, not that I thought that the Giants were going to be any good, but there was a sequence against the Saints in which their last 8 drives of the game ended punt, fumble, interception, turnover on downs. Somebody get me my Jalen Brunson jersey, please.
That is not a winning formula. I was on a flight.
Yeah, that's how you want.
I was on a flight from Denver to New York, and I took off right as the football stuff started. So I had
that's an elite play. Well done.
Yeah, well, I've actually gotten pretty good at it. I'm like I would never fly if there's not a football game on, because you can guarantee you're gonna get it. Like, I thought I'd watch the U20s on my flight. We'll talk about the US U20s coming up. And it was like the only channel unavailable was Telemundo and FS1, which is what the game was on. But I had the Washington Spirit on, and then I had on my phone the football game, and the Jets called a timeout with a minute and a half left in the first half because they had the Cowboys pinned. They proceeded to give up 2 touchdowns from that minute 50 on. It was like, okay, cool. Don't have to watch the second half of this one. I am locked and loaded and ready to go. But shout out to the Arsenal Tigers, U7s, who have gone 2-0 this week. Sorry, 3-0 this weekend. I was at 2 of the games, so I'm an undefeated streak right now as one of the biggest supporters of the Arsenal Tigers on their side of things. Okay, you did an awesome show on Thursday with Joe Lowry. As I mentioned, go back and listen to that. Joe talked a lot, big picture. stuff around MLS this season, what he's seen, what he thinks. And Joe's one of the best minds covering Major League Soccer and soccer in general. And we love Joe. And you should go read Backfield because every single week they are giving you some of the best content around national teams, around clubs, around USL, as well as around MLS. So we highly recommend you go check that out and dig into it. As I said, we'll talk Philly. We will talk about some of the other races that are going on in MLS, which have somewhat gotten a little bit less climactic on some sides and have gotten a little desperate for some sides, looking at you, Colorado. And we will talk Golden Boot race because we have that coming as well, as it has now heated up thanks to Denis Bouanga deciding that he was going to go Super Saiyan a few weeks ago, the moment that sun touched down in the U.S. We will talk about the US U20s, their successful group stage run, the matchup coming up against Italy. We'll talk a little USMNT and Canada as well, as they've got the friendlies coming up. So we have the U.S. against Ecuador on Friday night at Q2 Stadium in Austin. I will be there. So if you are planning to be around there, please hit me up on Blue Sky and I will be around. I think I will just be hanging for the game. So let me know. And then the U.S. plays Australia in Commerce City at the Rapids next Tuesday. In reverse, somewhat, Canada at home in Montreal. That is as big as it sounds. This is a team that hasn't played in Montreal in like a decade. They are playing against Australia at Saputo Stadium on Friday night, and then they face off against Colombia at Red Bull Arena, which I didn't realize was happening, and I will no longer be here, and now the only thing I want to do is go to a Canada-Colombia friendly at Red Bull Arena, because you know it's going to be
80% Colombians.
Yeah.
Like 80% Colombian fans.
100%. Yeah. I have been to multiple Colombia friendlies against like North America-based teams at Red Bull Arena, and it's always packed. And then you got Canada coming in, swagging in. Jesse Marsh back in the building. We're talking New Jersey, the Princeton grad. There's everything. And I didn't.
I don't think that's going to translate to Canadian fans.
Tom, I might need to book another flight. I might be back up here. Maybe I'll just take the train
from Austin.
Yeah. Well, I'll go Austin, Miami back up. But it's going to be a good week. So we will have your coverage next Thursday. We'll have full national team talk. We're going to do a little bit here today. We'll keep talking U20s as things go along. And then we will have all of your sort of recap stuff coming up next week. But let's dig into the big story. The Philadelphia Union, for the second time in the club's history, they have won a trophy. They have won the Supporters' Shield. And it was fairly storybook. Maybe I'm a little bit too, soft on stuff like this, but they've been to 2 conference finals. They've played NYCFC in both of them. They lost the first one with the crazy COVID game. Then they won the second one to go to MLS Cup. They get a chance to do it after the COVID year where they won the Shield, to actually do it at home and do it in front of their fans and create, the whole ceremony that they wanted and have the experience that they wanted and interact with the crowd. And of course, it's a club that was built by its fans. So you talk about the history of the Supporters' Shield being something that the fans created and the fans operate and the fans run, being won now by a club that was created off the back of the Sons of Ben's energy and their push to have a team in the market. It just all felt very storybook to me. And then to do it and close it out with a win is yeah, you could back into it. Other teams lose, whatever happens, the points could be secured, but it felt like the perfect way to do it, Tom. And a 1-0 win off a press, off a turnover in midfield, the cutback ball to Ura, who has now turned it on late. Everything about the goal was super Philadelphia. Everything about the game was super Philadelphia. And what they've done this year, which is hang around and battle the teams in the top half and dominate the teams in the lower half. And that's what this week was for them, from DC to this game. And that's what got them over the line and their second ever trophy.
Yeah, Philadelphia Union do their things the Philadelphia Union way, and they do it unapologetically, and they do it with full conviction. And I think that's pretty poetic, too, for just the city that it is. They've spoke for a while how this team is a microcosm of the city. It represents the city more philosophically even than just putting the name on the shirt. The way they play, the in-your-face style, the all-out style, the nature. And I will say one more point there is, so Ty Baribo's the team's leading scorer. He didn't start because this team, the team is the star. Traded Daniel Gazdag early in the season. They'll let players walk and then they'll bring in another one. They traded Jack McGlynn because he was a better fit in Houston than here. And just for everything that we think or worry or consider about them, at the end of the day, it is going to be a collaboration of just a lot of really good players, no standout players. Even when Ty Baribo was in the Golden Boot lead, I think a lot of people were still looking around him, and he's kind of fallen off that pace. But so Todd Baribo has 16 goals. They have 3 players with 10 plus goal contributions.
Yeah.
Which is Baribo, Wagner, and Ure. And then after that, they just got a bunch of guys who have, between 4 and 9 goal contributions. And that is the very most Philly Union thing of all for me.
Yeah, I think you could argue as you go through this team, you've got a lot of players who are top 5 in the league at their position. You probably don't have a lot that you say is clear number 1, but they probably equal any team in the collective of that. And they do it with players who have stepped in and filled in and were unknowns, quote unquote, coming into it, which I don't know why I say quote unquote, because I didn't know who these people were. So I'm part of the problem. But like, that's what Philadelphia has done really well. Central midfield's unbelievable. Like, the amount of players they have flipped in central midfield year after year after year, and the amount of quality they continue to find, and they do so. I mean, if you're a club anywhere in the world and Philadelphia comes and says, we want to sign this player, and they're a center mid, triple the price and just see what happens. Philadelphia will say no, but clearly that player is very good and has the ability to be a difference maker. I have talked about it, I think, pretty much since week 1. I think Jovan Lukic has been incredible. I think he's one of the best players in central midfield in the league, and I think he will push for best 11. Stanley Jean-Jacques has done the same. And Macania stepping into central midfield, center back.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, a spot where we thought they would have a DP in that role, and it ends up being an injury, and Macania steps in and has been every bit as good as you would like a center back to be. And these are all players that are not coming from, for some of them, really common areas that other people are scouting or figuring out. And Jose Martinez was the same. When he came in, it wasn't like at the time Venezuela was this like huge mining of soccer. Now it has gotten much better, and he is a part of like the tip of that iceberg, as a lot of players in MLS ended up becoming. And so you just have this consistent churn of players and the ability to win. Even like Frankie Westfield goes to the U20s. Like, that's missing a potential starter and a guy you could rotate in. And Bizo continues to be there and be a factor if they need to. Harrell has played center back, has played fullback, and has been a factor at both of them. And then you have the added pieces. They add Indy Vasilev in this season. They add Olofsky in this season. And Tom, that was kind of un-Philadelphia, which was, you look at this game, they both get a start, and it's like, oh, there's depth, there's reinforcement, and it kept the level probably a little bit higher late than what we are used to seeing for Philly.
Yeah, and even, I know we've made this joke before, but like, San Diego didn't want to pay Milan Olofsky, and then it's the big spending Philadelphia Union who come in and give the deal or whatever that another team wasn't willing to do or felt that it was past their evaluations winning. And it's almost always the Philadelphia Union who are the team sending that player away. And the Milan Olofsky signing has been a really important part to this team down the stretch, particularly so after Quinn Sullivan goes down with the torn ACL. Like, Milan Olofsky is like really crucial to this team in the playoffs, and he's been a starter. He's been playing at the like wide attacking midfield, like they play the 4-2-2, and he's just one of the 4 attackers, but he's not playing as a center forward. And he's just good and productive wherever he plays. And again, at the time, that was a surprising addition and one that we all, I think, we're positive on. But even more so now, like we kind of thought maybe it's going to be a luxury, and hey, if he doesn't win a starting spot, whatever, like this team will be fine. Like, no, like they need him right now, and that was a really, really good signing for this team. I want to talk about Macania. Macania, for me, I had him in top 5 in my 22 vote.
Yeah,
he's going to get sold probably in the winter, but at some point very soon. I know that there was a lot of decently sized teams in Europe that wanted him this summer, and the Union had already kind of moved on from enough players, and he was crucial enough that they know that they had to wait and can wait. But he came from the South African First Division, and he wasn't playing really at all at first. He's playing with the second team. They only made him a U22 initiative signing because of just cap purposes. It wasn't like this was a big transfer fee and like, oh my God, they would have signed him without a U22 slot. Right. It was just the accounting part of it. And he's just, once again, another player who seemingly comes from nowhere that not just pretty good. He's going to be a finalist for Defender of the Year on my ballot. Like, it's him, it's Tristan Blackman, it's Michael Boxall. Like, those are the names that come to mind, just riffing off the top of my head. Macania's been incredible this year. You talked about Stanley Jean-Jacques. You talked about Jovan Lukic. You just go on down the list, and yeah, I think the charming part of this team is while it's a good point to say they probably have a lot of guys that are top 5 of their position in like a decent amount of places around the field. But unlike talking about, like, let's just say LAFC, where you talk about Bouanga and Son and all of that. No. It's like it's the left back, it's the center back, it's the 8 and the 6, and it's probably the right back and the goal. It's like, and then you get to the attacking spots, and it's it's going to be a combination of 4 or 5 guys, and guess what? None of them are going to be elite, but all of them are going to be very good or solid or strong, and then just as a team is where we're going to do this. And again, this is the kind of team that lends itself better to a Shield race than, say, knockout competition, whether it's the playoffs or not.
Yeah.
Not that they can't be dangerous in the playoffs, but this kind of team and the style of the team plays is built to excel over the regular season, and they did that here, and they are a very, very deserving winner.
Yeah. We'll talk about the playoffs in a moment. I think we'll talk as well overall about where this team stands historically, because that's now the territory you enter when you win a trophy like this. 33 goals against leads Major League Soccer. That's the big stat for them. That's how they win, as you said, and that is because of the strength of that back 7, 6, 8, whatever you want to call it. 12 home wins that has become a fortress for them, and now they have the ability to host in every round. Now, of course, they will go on the road in the first round because nothing matters. And we have to create 97 other setups, but they will host in every round. They have the potential to host MLS Cup, which has never happened for them, which would be electric. Subaru Park, 4 games.
That'd be incredible. Yeah. I'm even just like the tailgate aspect of it, like walking around that stadium under the bridge, what the fans bring, and walking through the tunnel from under kind of the Sons of Ben. I don't know, man. That would be I think that would play really, really well in terms of an atmosphere and like it'd be up there with the best of the best.
Yeah, I went down as a fan just to go watch the first round of the playoffs in 22, which was so fun. And then I went back to cover the Eastern Conference Finals when they ended up winning and knocking off NYCFC, as I said, that revenge game from the year before, and then go to 2022 MLS Cup where they have some unfinished business. So it's a huge opportunity for them. They don't know who they will play in the first round, of course, because it'll be that wild card winner. Could be Columbus, could be Chicago. I believe it could still be Orlando as well, as Orlando could drop into that spot, which would be a tough. I mean, Columbus, even with all the injuries they have, we'll talk about it when we get to the playoffs, will feel like a tough draw. I don't know that it is. Orlando would suck to play in a wild card game. That's like not a thing you got to earn. And I think that would be really unfortunate for this team. But either way, they talked about it post game. They talked about it all season. Like, they're not going to be intimidated. They're going to stick to their style. They're very good at what they're good at. And on that question of style, I think you look back, and I'm looking at Supporter Shield because I'm looking at all time stuff. And you look back over the last, let's say 12, 15 years. And as you get past the Keene and Landon Galaxy teams, the teams that have repeated for Supporters Shield are the New York Red Bulls, LAFC, and the Philadelphia Union. And I think what you would say about all three of those is they had a very distinct style. Mm-hmm. And the ebbs and flows of the reality of Major League Soccer, which is it's not the top league in the world. And when players are good, they'll leave. And you have salary restrictions, so you can't keep squads together all the time, is what we talk about a lot, which is if you have a clear identity that you lean into, you can find pieces maybe that other people aren't looking for that can help you and continue to progress your team going forward. And you can fill in for pieces or players that you miss. And I think when you look at those three clubs, and then you talk about, well, the Revs set a points record, then they fall off the face of the earth right after. And for multiple reasons, but one being like they had a good year, but not everything about it was fully sustainable at that level. Cincinnati has tried and they've stayed around. And then you have other teams that pop up, have a great year, and then it's hard to maintain. Atlanta did so fully on the back of talent. And so when that talent leaves, you have to re-find yourself and reformat yourself. And I think it goes to show the differences maybe between the regular season and the postseason, because maybe the postseason success wasn't there for all of those teams that I just talked about. But like, what happens, Tom, if you have that commitment and you have that like style, and I think you look at three clubs that were built by really strong personalities, whether it's coach or as sporting director, and have been able to maintain success year in and year out.
It's a really good point, and I think it's a good through line to draw between those clubs where like it's not totally style, though there are principles, particularly the Red Bulls in Philly. But like even with LAFC, like while they were more like a pyrotechnic attack, particularly like with the Vela Shield, they have the structure, the defensive identity, but again also just in generality having that committed idea and you know how they want to play. And it's not like there are tweaks along as the season goes, but for the most part, hey, this is how we play and this is how we're going to play. And it makes it easier when then if you're missing a player, like Philly, this would be a good example. You said like Westfield's out, Gazog's gone, whichever two of the three starting level forwards that they have are in, they all know what the role is. The rest of the team knows, yeah, whether it's Ura or Bribo or whether it's Damiani, yeah, every player is a little bit different, but we generally know exactly how this is going to go. And I think that saves for little rounding errors when things aren't totally perfect throughout the season, because even when you kind of make mistakes or when if there is any level of drop off, it's all going in the same direction. And this is one of I think the golden rules of squad building, even in a more general sense here, that if you have that identity, if you have that plan and you're committed to it, then it's easier to rebuild or reload, probably would be a better term, on the fly, rather than you look at the bad teams in this league and the teams that continue to run into trouble where, okay, we need to overturn the roster and then we're going to go from, counterattacking team to a pressing team. Oh, now we're going to go to a possession team. Philadelphia Union aren't doing that. LAFC, I've kind of had more tweaks around, but it's kind of been slower. And again, it's just so important to have a good plan and stick to it. And that gives you a baseline where in a regular season with so much travel in this league, so many games in this league, if you can put your brain on autopilot or know that hey, this is my fastball and we're just going to close our eyes and throw it here, that helps give you a floor that other teams don't have.
Yeah. I think one of the other things that stands out when you look at the list of Shields as you go back, we are probably past the time where anyone's going to repeat. And I think part of that is how hard and important CONCACAF has become, CONCA Champions. I think part of that is Leagues Cup and all the crap that gets thrown in. If you're good, you are worse off the next year than every other team because you have a bunch of bonuses to pay out, which often thins out your squad, and you're going to play in the most competitions. You're going to play in Campeones Cup. Even though, it's one added game, but they start to add up. The Galaxy, 2010, 2011, are the last back-to-back winners. And I think now knowing that Inter Miami won't win, Busquets retires, so now you're moving into whatever that era is. And I think many of us would be surprised if Philadelphia repeats as Shield winner next year because it's so hard, and they will be back in CONCA Champions and all of that. Yes?
All of your points are salient, correct, and they sound better than what I'm going to say, but it's also just numerics. 2010 MLS had 16 teams. 2011 had 18 teams.
Yes.
It was competitive, and I think that there are less and less dumb teams as the years go along, and this is true across all these different sports. It's a case of numerics and a lot of teams getting smarter. It is.
So here's what's interesting about
the dynasty. We do the dynasty talk, and it's why are we focusing on what's next? This in and of itself is a huge achievement, and for leagues that have bigger history, or even early MLS where you're all those early DC United teams. There was 10 teams in a league then too. It was extremely impressive. But it's just winning one trophy one time is such a huge accomplishment.
Yeah, and it's why I think it, like you said, it has to be celebrated and it has to be a big deal for teams, and it's a huge part of their history. It's interesting though in the thought process, which I agree with you, is the changing of the league has also led to these point records being broken. Because let's talk about, so Philadelphia is on 66 points right now. They've set their club record for most wins ever in a season already. They still have one game to play. They play Charlotte on the road to close out this season. If they win that game, they're on 69 points.
Nice.
Huge deal for the team. Yeah, that is exactly what they were gunning for when the season started. No matter what, they can't break the points record. That one set already. Why do I not have there we go. Because I can't count or read or anything. Here we go. Inter Miami last year set the points record, 74 points. New England 3 years before, 73. LAFC in 2019 at 72. Red Bulls at 71. And then if Philadelphia is able to win in the upcoming game, they will move into a tie with FC Cincinnati from 2 years ago and the New York Red Bulls from 2018. And Toronto FC from 2017 on 69 points. And that would be fifth all time. So what's fascinating is while all of the less bad teams, less dumb teams, whatever, the points numbers have gone up. And for a decent amount of that, that's on the same amount of games played. There are other seasons where there were less games played. Mm-hmm. So now you're going to points per game. And then, of course, we got the shootout era, which is chaos and doesn't really help anyone and just makes all this stuff really difficult to deal with. But in context of all time, let's say Philly finishes with a win. Let's say they finish on 69 points and they have a nice season and they're able to move into that tie for 5th place all time with 2017 TFC, who went on to win the double, of course, which is a massive part of that history.
Triple.
And Cincinnati, did they win the triple? Oh, Canadian Championship?
Yeah.
Yeah. And Cincinnati, who 2 years ago was able to break out of their funk all time, and Lucho had an MVP season and all of that. Where do you think this Philly season lines up? How do you think it's remembered?
It's funny I think if you asked 100 MLS fans, and let's just take away like no Toronto fans and no Philly fans. I think if you asked 100 MLS fans before you read out all the stats, hey, who's better, Toronto or Toronto 2017 or Philly 25? I think you get 98 people that aren't just saying Toronto, but being like, that's not even a question, right?
Yeah.
Like we hold that side in such reverence, and of course that comes with winning MLS Cup and the but like even just looking at those teams, the fact that they could end on the same amount of points when until LAFC and the Valley, like that 2017 Toronto team is still held up in the conversation of best single season MLS teams of all time. Yeah. This Philly team, we'll see what happens in the playoffs, but like I'd be hard pressed to kind of see that, which is funny. Like while they are very, very good, I was blown away that these two teams have the potential to be on the same amount of points.
Yeah. I agree. I think part of the context to the way people view them is that Toronto team links a 2016 Cup final loss through a 2018 in February CONCACAF Champions loss. And so there's this sustained success across 18 to 24 months in there that comes in the middle of, plus winning the treble, which I think if Philadelphia goes on and wins MLS Cup, now we're talking about greatest seasons of all time.
Oh, for sure.
If you're able to link an MLS Cup in this Eastern Conference, which is arguably as hard a conference as we've ever seen, which we have in the chat here, John O'Donnell saying making the playoffs used to be around 45 points. Teams in the East are all above 50 now. So if you can get out of that, that's a whole nother convo. But I think for the regular season, it will be interesting to see how this team is viewed, because Cincinnati from 2 years ago is probably your best comp, and then Red Bulls from 2018. But you don't have an MVP on this team. You don't have a Golden Boot winner. So there's not going to be like Lucho from 2 years ago is what stands out. It was Cincinnati. It was Lucho. You don't have, and whether it's Tyler Adams or whoever else you want to talk about in that 2018 team for the Red Bulls, maybe it just ends up being Jesse into Chris Marsh, and or Chris Armas, and that's the face of it, whatever it is. That will be what's interesting as this team is remembered. I think the goals against will be one of those things that teams will be judged by going forward. And this is the example of an elite defense winning championships and what teams are capable of. But I'm curious what everyone else thinks. So send us some feedback. We'll dig into this more on Thursday as we have time to sort of digest and everything. But the big story, one of the big stories for this team, is the shift back to who Philadelphia was, letting Jim Curtin go at the end of last year, bringing in Bradley Carnell, who had been fired in St. Louis, and there was question marks around, and then recommitting to what they did best. And as much as from the outside, we still said Philly was a pressing team, internally they felt they had moved away from it, and they were able to get back to that this year. And that ends up being, they reshifted all their numbers. I think, I don't know if it was Ben or Joe wrote this up in Backfield, but they did all the work for me, so I don't want to do it myself. And they used American Soccer Analysis to help get there. But they said fewer passes in their own third than any year since Ernst Tanner has arrived. They also hit the fewest in all of MLS this season. They forced opponents to hit the longest pass based on average vertical distance in MLS. By that metric, Philly have become even more aggressive than they were back in 2022 when they nearly won the Shield. So they were able to refine what made them great. They were able to lean harder into that. They don't play out of the back. They play forward quickly. Then they go and press you while you try and play out. And if you play short, they win it and they create chances. And if you play long, it's an easy ball for them to wing back, because playing long in soccer is really, really hard, which is why you try and get teams to do it as much as possible. That's what Bradley Carnell brought to this team. It's what he did when he was good in St. Louis. It's his background in Red Bull. And it's another, I think, tip of the cap, Tom, to Ernst Tanner for understanding his club, his team, and finding the right guy.
Exactly. This was, and just to continue to reframe, like, while I'm going to say that I knew stylistically this is what they were going to look like this year, and I thought that was going to be a higher floor. Nobody saw this coming. Like not a single person. Like most people had them missing the playoffs. For them to have gotten to the top tier kind of result of what could have been possibly nothing reasonably expected for this team, and getting that higher right, and again tripling down on what they wanted to do. All of those numbers from Joe and Ben are really good. Just to add a couple more, like field tilt, fourth in MLS, passes per defensive actions, first in MLS, fourth in attack speed, second in shots. Somehow they're 11th in possession, because I think that they are so difficult to play against through the press. Like you said, more teams have to try to go long. And guess what? When you go long, they have Makanya and Glesnes gobbling up everything. What this team has done and how they've done it on the fly is nothing short of extremely impressive. I still think that it's too difficult to sift through like ranking, like power ranking, like front offices and stuff, right? I've said it for a long time. The Philadelphia Union team is top 5, and it's always been, you know, Philly and LAFC, and he climbed down the list. But like right now, sitting here today, what Ernst Tanner and that team has done with this roster, again, not just doing it one time, which is hard in and of itself, overturning this roster 3 times probably. I think we're in the 3rd evolution of the Philadelphia Union under Ernst Tanner since he joined this club, and doing it on this budget. Nobody else has done this. Why? Like LAFC have been really impressive that they've overturned rosters consistently and still been really competitive. Even with all the money in the world, that's not easy. It's another level doing it. It's finding the next Makanya. It's okay, Jose Martinez leaves, and then Danley Jean-Jacques and Jovan Lukic comes in. They've done this 3 times at essentially every position but left back and goalkeeper.
Yeah. Yep. It's really impressive. And it should be applauded. And that's why we spent a lot of time talking about it. Congrats to the fans in Philadelphia. Congrats to the club, the team. I'm sure everyone has seen the pictures of Alejandro Bedoya, nose bleeding, celebrating after a guy who's been with this club through this change of style. He was brought in as a DP to sort of mimic the model other teams were doing in the league. And they made 1 playoff appearance that way. They got smoked by Toronto. And then Ernst Tanner comes in and refines who they are. They've become one of the best youth developers, and they've taken steps towards that this year. Maybe not as many young players as they would like from their own academy pushed into this team, but they don't win this Shield if Andrew Rick doesn't play the way he played this year. They don't win the Shield if Frankie Westfield, who we've talked about a bunch, doesn't step in and play the way they played. And then I have talked about this over and over. Not everyone has to be a national team player. Like Nathan Harriel, although he is a national team player, doesn't need to go to Europe. Like maybe what they did was, if Nathan Harriel can play center back or right back at an above league average level at both positions for the next 10 years, that helps them bring the next Neil Pierre through, because he can play. And when he doesn't, you don't have to have a $900,000 center back on the bench who has to be pushed into the team. These are the things that help them, I think, push along and be really, really good. A couple interesting things coming off the back of this. Obviously, Quinn Sullivan, a massive loss. We did the show, I think, last week, and his ACL injury was announced after that. He's been one of the best players on this team. We talked Milan Olowski and Indy Vassilev. They're going to carry the load of what he did for this team. He was the best chance creator on this team outside of Kai Wagner, and I think that gave him a little bit of a different game. Statistically, some of the stuff him and Olowski do are similar. I think there's more nuance to Sullivan's game. I think Olowski is more of a straight line runner and finisher. And they're really going to miss Quinn Sullivan. He pushed himself into the national team because he was so consistent at that high level. Every single game for the first half of this season, he was a game changer. He had multiple game-changing moments. They came from set pieces. They came from the run of play. They came against set defenses, which I think he's probably as good at in this team as anyone, and that's going to be a huge factor in the playoffs if teams have to go to Philly and sit in. And it sucks for a young player, because I think he legitimately was in the national team conversation going into a World Cup. And in general, you hate to see a player's sort of form be knocked off like that, and now he has to go through the rehab and all of that. So really, really unfortunate for him, and we're hoping for the best for him going forward. I thought it was a beautiful tribute from the club for Holden Trent, for the goalkeeper who passed away tragically in a car accident outside of the team, a young player, a young person with a bright future who was a huge part of the fabric of the club. And so to celebrate him in that exact moment just shows how much he meant to everyone and how much he meant to the club. And I think a really, really fitting tribute to what this club represents. Again, we've said, not a star. It is the fabric of everyone from the fans all the way through, and a huge representation of that for them. We've talked about Bradley Carnell a couple times. Obviously, his first year with the team, he will be in the running for Coach of the Year. Tom, do you have a quick power ranking in any of that?
I don't want to lock myself into anything off the top of my head. I will be doing this kind of as we get to decision day, and then after decision day, submit that. A quick sidebar: to not be submitting any awards until after all of the 34 games have been submitted. I use this as a PSA to everybody that are voting. You did it in February.
Yeah.
He's obviously
Inter Miami players 1 through 11.
It's Javier Mascherano, of course. Him, Sorensen, Mikey Varas, like those are the 3 guys that I think everybody's going to be considering around it. And between those three, I think they're all deserved winners. So a long-winded way of saying yes, he's going to be in the mixer.
Yeah, and he deserves to be. He said after the game, "We're not the superstars. I'm not the super coach. We don't care. We like it this way. We fly under the radar. We make mistakes. We grow. We learn. We move on." And then we're at 66 points later. That he said that in the post-game interview. He came on this show and spoke very openly. We really appreciated the time he spent with us going into their Open Cup run, and they've had to manage a lot. The 7-0 loss to Vancouver, and then the Open Cup semifinal loss, and it felt like the air had come out of the wind. The wind had come out of the sails for this club. So for them to come back and be able to find their feet again, have the self-belief and like the accountability that, no, we're not going to give up on the season. Like these moments matter, and to refine themselves is really, really huge. That post-game interview question he gave was to one of our own, Michele Giannone, who we love. He followed that up with a question at the end about leaving St. Louis that Bradley Carnell didn't want to answer. Now, Carnell has talked about this publicly, so it was not out of left field for Michele to ask this question. It also is the clear conversation. It's unfortunate, but what we do is you have these story arcs. So when a player comes back from an ACL injury and wins something, pretty much the first question is always back to the worst moment that they were at their bottom to then represent how they got to the top. And Bradley Carnell didn't want to answer it at the time. I think not only was it a reasonable question for Michele, I think it was the right question to ask. I thought he did a good job throughout that interview, and Carnell gave some really good answers in the 3 questions before that. And I don't think it was out of line at all. I will say, though, there are a lot of people in Major League Soccer that I will slam for not being open to press and open to the conversation topics that should happen around sports. I don't think Carnell is one of them. I think this was an odd moment that just happened. So I'm not going to come out here and say you have to do more, because I think there are a lot of teams in MLS that do have to do more. And there are a lot of characters who have to do more. And I don't know that Carnell is one of them. And Michele's as good as anyone who does what he does. There's a reason he's the only one that has gotten messy on the record about interesting things over the last year. Michele is an ace at his job. He also understands storylines and what people want, and he cares passionately about this league. This is not a guy who read a game notes, saw that he coached this team, now this team, and showed up. Michele watches every single game, and he's living this league week in and week out, and he has for years. So I think I understand it blowing up. I'm surprised they even ran it. I'm not the producer of the game, so I'm not a part of it. And I think also it became a storyline on its own, which this league needs more of. There are not enough villains or heroes. We are way too much in the middle on so much stuff. Part of that is what some to many feel like is an infomercial of coverage of this league, which is why we created SoccerWise and why we want to be here. And overall, I thought it was an odd way to be in a championship celebration, but it was a flashpoint, and we need more flashpoints.
I agree. In the chat, MJ Blonseth jokes Carnell disrespects of Michele, takes him out of the running for Coach of the Year, which is kind of funny. He followed it up to set up a better joke. MJ Blonseth goes, if Carnell walked off on Weeby, more acceptable.
And then John O'Donnell says, you don't ask that question when they're literally lifting the trophy. And John, this is what I'm saying. You do. Go back and watch a Super Bowl trophy lift. And if they have a player on who has come back from an injury,
Saquon Barkley with the Eagles and the Giants, like you should be asking.
Yeah, these are the storylines, and this is what gravitates people to these moments. And this is what elevates these moments from congratulations, you've won a rec soccer league because no one cares about this thing, to there's fan interest and there's money and there is viewing, and all of that is because of these storylines. So I think that's where these things do matter and these things do get brought up. And I guarantee you Weeby would ask the same question if he was in that situation without ever talking to him about it.
Yeah. Listen, again,
we would ask the same question.
I probably wouldn't have been smart enough to get it all in sequence, or I would have stumbled over it for 30 seconds. Like he got So first of all, it wasn't the first. Like I think what was that, Gus? The third kind of question.
Yeah, it was the fourth. I think.
That if there's if not the time, then when? I'm sure that he was asked or would have been asked about it in the post game press conference with the kind of written media that were there. I think it's totally in bounds, and he could have said like, I don't want to talk about that. I want to focus on this, guys. And I like it's a good moment.
Yeah.
I don't like if anybody that's within the league that is looking at this in a negative way, like we're talking because this was really interesting. I think that it's something that was a positive. Like I tweeted the clip because I thought it was a positive. Like I thought that this was, oh my God, like he didn't want to talk about. And let's just say, do you think he still feels some type of way about St. Louis? Because he
it's
does.
An answer on its own.
And that is and like that. I don't know, man. Like for me, like we need more of that stuff. We need to be like I don't know. I just thought it was a really fun moment. Like it was. And I don't think it was disrespectful in any way. And sorry, John O'Donnell in the chat saying like, talking about your point of like that's an injury, not that you're disrespected by another organization. If I was Bradley Cornell, I would be desperate for you to ask me that question right there. I would love that. And like even if I did a decryptic thing, even if I had to try to do the fake high road of listen, I'm focused on the guys here. I would want to be, hey, remember you fired me when I led you to what was the expansion record 2 years ago, and then within 5 months of the next season, I lost all my goodwill and you fired me. And guess what? You guys suck now, and you have fired my replacement. Yeah, I'm over here with the supporter shield. I'm gonna go celebrate with my team. I would want to be asked that if I was Bradley Cornell.
Yeah, and I can guarantee you this: if Evander wins MVP or MLS Cup, he will be asked about the Portland Timbers. It's a slightly different situation, but like these are storylines. These are things that pop rather than just you're good, you're great, and it moves along because people like the up and downs and people like being pushed against it and all of that. But either way, as you said, it's a great moment. Philadelphia Union are able to lift the trophy. Tell us where you think they rank all time as a team, because I think this is a really interesting question to do. This league and the sport here is changing so rapidly. It is one of the things that we are fighting to do well, which is comparing things across eras. I think Doyle does it better than any of us, probably because he's 1,000 years old and has the knowledge of what the 72 Cosmos looked like playing out of the back. But because of that, I think we have to do more of it. And I'm curious what other people think. I'm curious what Philly fans think. How do they compare this in their head against 2020, which was just a bizarre situation? And how do other teams? Morgan sort of said in the chat, as a Philly fan, it's odd to me to think about comparing this team to 2017 TFC. But if they finish on the same amount of points, that's the conversation you're having. And I think it will be really, really fun to have it going forward. The reason that Philadelphia was able to lock things in so cleanly, you could say, this weekend is because some other teams fell off the mark. We talked about 5, 6, 7 teams being in the MLS Supporter Shield playoff or in the conversation. And then a lot of teams struggled to keep pace, which is what led Philadelphia to win it all. But we still had some other big finishes this weekend. Vancouver closed out the weekend with a 4-1 win. They sit on 60 points, tied in first for the Western Conference. They have a game in hand because of all the games they've played, but that will come in the international break. It is a team that is heavily struggling right now with injuries and depth. So it'll be fascinating to see what they do there. And they are tied with San Diego FC at the top of the Western Conference. San Diego, they won their 18th game this weekend, a 4-2 win to eliminate the Houston Dynamo. That 18th win is the record for an expansion team in their opening season. So 18 victories. If you want to go points, you want to go whatever, it is the greatest expansion season in league history, Tom. And it's not a supporter shield, which probably was outside of the realm of what we should have been asking for, but it's a pretty special season for San Diego.
Yeah, so for me, like taking away Chicago 98 for all the reasons that that's just not an expansion season in the same way.
It's an expansion season, kind of an expansion league.
Yeah. For me, this is the best expansion regular season that we've seen. You have Seattle in 09 that won the Open Cup, and they were kind of the first team to be like, oh, no, like you're allowed to just come in and be good immediately.
Yeah, you don't have to
wait. Then built upon by Atlanta and LAFC when they came in, and now San Diego. They've all done it in different ways, particularly this, like the San Diego team did spend some money on Lozano, but like Anders Dreyer wasn't like a huge outlay then, so they only did go with the 2 DPs. A lot of their like U22 stuff, it wasn't like they were putting in big fees on U22s. It was really talented players, and it's just a really smart roster build. They have something like $5 million in GAM that they can already be ready to use next season, or need like if they upgrade at center forward, where does this team go if they get another good center back or kind of more coverage just as the team builds out? Like, this was an A-plus season in their expansion debut, both by results and performance and by, again, underlying style and individual success. Like, they had both the team success and individuals where it's just like, oh yeah, Chucky Lozano was worth it. Anders Dreyer, maybe the signing of the season. You go on kind of down, CJ Dos Santos, there's questions about him. Is he ready? Like, he just hasn't been a starter in MLS yet. Like, do we know if he's good enough? Yep, he's good enough. And you kind of can say that about 7 other players. And Severkov is, I don't know, I'll probably have him on my best 11. He'll absolutely be in the mix for me. He'll be on my first or second team, which again, I will be doing a third 3 teams as always until MLS makes it official on their end. But the San Diego team, I don't want to focus on them falling out of the Shield race, though. They could have been more aggressive this summer. They could have kept Milan Olaski. They could have replaced Milan Olaski without, like, they got Amal Pellegrino. They got Corey Baird. Like, they had room to do more. I don't think that that's the pertinent view on this, because that's just moving the goalposts. And if you do that, you're just going to be miserable all of the time, because even then, if you win MLS Cup, it's like, well, did you do it next year, right? Like, we can do that with every team and everybody. What an unbelievable season for San Diego. The best regular season in MLS expansion history. And if they advance literally one round in the playoffs, right, it is not a debate whether or not this is the best season. Again, like, the only one that you could really talk about is how much you value Seattle winning the Open Cup, which kind of like falls out of this realm. But comparing them to like LAFC and Atlanta in their incredibly special debut seasons, like San Diego
playoff wins.
If they advance literally one round, it's not a debate.
Yeah, St. Louis lost in the first round of the playoffs. Atlanta lost in the first round of the playoffs.
Like, I still look at Atlanta and LAFC.
Okay, they both lost in the first round of the playoffs. I think Damir Kreilach and Zach Steffen got in their way. I think that was the Dami karate chop, like volley.
No, that wasn't the Dami karate chop. Yeah,
which was an epic moment, and RSL kind of owned LAFC for a little while. After that one, on the flip side of this game, Houston officially eliminated. 4-2 loss in this one, coming off what's been a pretty good run, a couple of years, Western Conference Finals appearance and a U.S. Open Cup victory. This was the biggest churn of roster in that time period for them. It started all the way in the preseason with Coco Carrasquilla going to Mexico. Mikael, a huge loss for them, being sold down to Brazil. And they've done the work as the season has gone along to backfill these spots, but all of it happened later. And it really put them behind the 8 ball. Jack McGlynn, the big addition for them, the announcement coming that his foot injury will have him out for the rest of 2025. Less important for Houston, more important for the national team and for him. But hopefully he'll be back and ready to go next season and fight his way back into the conversation. And I think he was as advertised, right? He got the chance to be the centerpiece. He was a big chance creator for them. He was their best chance creator. He scored goals. He took set pieces, all of that. What do you make of where this team stands now and what the Houston Dynamo's offseason and build towards 26 looks like?
Yeah, it's difficult because the most, like, if we're dissecting what went wrong, it was that it took too long for the replacements to come. And even in goal with Steve Clark, the decision to let Steve Clark leave, their goalkeeping has been an absolute mess this season. Yeah. Andrew Tarbell started in goal and he got injured, and now it's Jonathan Bond. I'm pulling up the, like, they have had the 3rd worst goalkeeping group in MLS, like on FB refs, like post shot expected goals minus goals conceded. The only teams worse are DC and Sporting Kansas City in terms of underperforming their expected values.
Good thing DC spent a U22 spot.
Jonathan Bond has been the 2nd worst goalkeeper in the league in that metric with -7. So it's like, that's the difference between getting the playoffs and not. And this team has much more issues than Philadelphia did last season. But coming out of last season with Philly, like, their underlying numbers were still strong. They had bad injuries, and Andrew Rick wasn't ready last season.
Yeah.
And I think he let in like 7 or 8 goals from outside the box, and Andre Blake let in 1. And that was just a microcosm of those numbers. And bang, like, Andre Blake comes back and they're good. Houston didn't have an Andre Blake to turn to, right? Like, Steve Clark, it seems to have been, it would have been better, but, like, again, it wasn't as that black and white. Jack McGlynn, awesome sign. Awesome. But that's really it, kind of at the top of the roster. You look at, like, Zico Ponce had 10 goals in 2,600 minutes. Solid, fine, right? It's a club record signing, but fine. I wouldn't call that like a failure. Andre Linger has not shown up yet, and maybe he will be better next year, but he didn't come until the summer as it was. Griffin Dorsey is third on this team in goal contributions with six goal contributions. I think that shows what you kind of need to know. Lawrence Anali looked really good when he was signed. I think he is a good player. Untimely injury. So they have had injuries, but Mikael going, you can't turn down that number. You can't turn down that money, but the timing hurt, and just losing Mikael, that is not a player that is able to be replaced dollar for dollar in terms of value on the salary cap, because he was one of the best center backs in the league last year. And it's just, you're not going to be able to replace him. And they struggled to get in a center back. And I don't think that they've kind of replaced him really at all, but it was a team in transition in a lot of different ways this season, and it didn't happen over, and again, for factors out of their control as well, but it didn't happen between November and February. It happened from February until August.
Yeah, the factors out of their control is tough because some of it's like an MLS team will never be able to fully cover and anticipate everything that happens. And the other is, how early is it in Pat Onsted's tenure where it's like, okay, he was able to find a good starting 11 and these star pieces out of nowhere. It's hard to find the next one up, right? You knew Mikael was going to get bought at some point. You knew Coco.
I didn't think it was gonna be this. I didn't think that Godfather offer was coming this soon.
Exactly. And so he hasn't backfilled that spot to say, all right, let's get the third center back on the roster who we think can step in. Similar to what we just talked about with Philly, right? Milan Olowski coming into this team is because there's an anticipation that some of the attacking pieces will be bought next year. That's a pre-deal. Macania being brought into this club was in anticipation of a Glesnes or a Jack Elliott moving on. Houston didn't do that. The question that has to be asked is, did they have the time? Do they have the capability? And if that's the answer, then, we have the question in the chat of like, is anyone in trouble, front office, head coach? Then that would be the only reason that would happen. I think it's a little bit too early for a club that's been in the doldrums of the league for 10 years to have said, come in, build a cup winner, build a Western Conference contender, and have already put in all of your redundancies to be able to flip those players. But you knew Coco Carrasquilla had performed as a golden ball winner in CONCACAF now multiple years in a row. So you knew that offer was going to come, and you knew that you had to fill in for some of these pieces. And I think the real pain of this year was how long it took for some of these deals to get done. And to not have any of them in place preseason really hurt, because you had to try and figure it out on the fly, and you're playing Linger on the fly, trying to figure out what's his best position while still building the team around Jack McGlynn, while not having the defensive reinforcement to really cover for these players. And you talk about goalkeeper as well. I think the Bond thing is painful for many reasons. One being, there are multiple teams in MLS that have two goalkeepers better than Jonathan Bond. And the fact that you couldn't go out and find a deal for one of those. I mean, you've got two Canadian national team goalkeepers on Portland. And Portland doesn't even have, well, they've had a pretty good defense this year. But still, like, you could go put offers in there for those players. So I think my assumption would be the team would say, listen, this year, we're basically a Goss Theorem team. Everyone's coming back next year for their second year. Lawrence Anali, his first year back from ACL. You're not going to see the best of him. What do you get next year? And I think that's what the team would say internally. And I'm okay with that. But Griffin Dorsey was asked because his option is available. And it would be the last year on his deal. And you don't really want to have a guy on the last year because you're not going to get anything for them. There's, outside of Linger and Ponce, not a lot of guys are locked in. And so I think there'll be some internal questions of, if you want to get better, who do you move and how do you set this team up? But I think this was a year of like Houston's accepting the reality, which is they're not going to be the biggest spending team in the league. They're not going to sit at the top of that. They have to perform against the numbers somehow. Ache was an outlier of a signing, and Mikael and Coco were outliers in terms of what they performed on the numbers they were on. And they got to find more guys like that. But Philadelphia proved you can do it if you stay consistent. If it was me running this, I would keep everything as is, because I would believe that over the course of a 3-4 year span, the ups and downs where this team is nets out at average is better than what I should be as the Houston Dynamo. That doesn't excuse the fact that it's like the fourth largest market in the country, and this team should be spending the same amount as Atlanta and just be a really big club. But I think we've sort of passed on that, which is that's a possibility. In the Western Conference, Houston officially eliminated. Colorado, a huge weekend against them. They drop out of the Western Conference playoff spots with a 1-0 Rocky Mountain Cup loss at Salt Lake City. They retain the Rocky Mountain Cup, I believe, but this loss is probably a little bit worse. This officially clinched a playoff spot for Portland in their loss to Seattle, and FC Dallas has moved into the playoff spots alongside RSL right now. FC Dallas are 8th right now on 41 points after a 2-1 win over the LA Galaxy, led by who else but MVP frontrunner Petar Musa. And now they play the Galaxy again this weekend in a makeup game. So for Colorado, they currently sit in 10th in the West. They have played more games than RSL and Dallas, and they need them to drop points both in the games that they have to make up and then in the game on decision day for Colorado to jump them. It feels like probably a little bit too much, and Colorado let this one slip, Tom, in the middle of this season.
Yeah, 1 win in the last 6. They have LAFC on the final day of the season. Throughout this run where they have 1 win in 6, that win was against Houston, but they also played Dallas and RSL and Kansas City when they were technically still alive. Like, they were able to control their own fate there. If you win the games against the teams that you are fighting for those spots for, you have those opportunities, so you can't be upset. It's like, oh man, like Dallas picked up points this weekend. That's unfortunate. Well, you just lost to Dallas, and now you just lost to Real Salt Lake. And those are the two teams right now that are occupying the wild card spots that I felt really strongly Colorado were going to hang on to, particularly with I think how promising Paxton Aronson was immediately. And now they're going to be faced with some like philosophical questions this winter if they don't get over the line. And it'll be really difficult to pick up because they will need to pick up something, even if Real Salt Lake and Dallas lose both of their last games because of the way that the tiebreakers are working right now. No, sorry. Yeah, it's because they're 1 point behind Dallas.
Yeah.
They would have the winning. They would need at least a point against LAFC in the theory that Dallas and Real Salt Lake all drop their points. So it's just a lot of ifs and a lot of I don't know, man. It's a team that I felt strongly about that was going to stay over the line, and they've fallen apart down the stretch, and it's going to be a really interesting offseason. I'll say that much.
So RSL plays Seattle in the makeup game. I believe that's because of Club World Cup that one was rescheduled. And then they play St. Louis in the decision day game, their actual game. And as I said, Dallas hosted the Galaxy this weekend. They travel to the Galaxy next weekend, and then they travel to Vancouver on the final weekend of the season. And Vancouver has another makeup game coming this week. So both teams will not have the international break off, but you're coming off technically full rest for that one. So there's a lot that can still happen. But as you said, this is a Colorado team that hasn't beaten the teams they have to head to head. I think a lot of it on the fly, there's like some good ideas behind all of it, right? They bring in Rob Holding. They try and re-solidify the center back position, which has been a struggle for them this year after a number of years where they've been really successful in that spot. And then you lose your talisman in Georgi Mihailovic. And from what I see, I think Paxton Aronson can replace that spot. It's a lot to put on someone to now become the center of a team for the first time pretty much in their life, mid-season, in a new city, in a new setup. And so my hope would be they believe in what they see, and they're trying to bring a lot of it back. Cudi Pietro didn't have the year he'd want to because of injuries. There's a lot to like, but we'll talk about Colorado more when they're officially eliminated going forward. San Jose is still technically alive in all of this. If a million things happen, they would jump Colorado and they would sneak in as the final team in the postseason. That feels fairly unlikely. They're on 38 points. So they're 2 behind Colorado and RSL, 3 behind Dallas. And of course, those top 2 teams have a game in hand on them. The last big race, quote unquote, to talk about is the Golden Boot race. Denis Bouanga has been electric since Son joined the team. He is now tied on 24 goals for the lead with Leo Messi. They both have a makeup game coming this week that they will both miss for international break. And then they will come back for their decision day games, and that will decide most of the fate. Sam Surge is in second on 23 goals, so 1 behind, and his Nashville team will face off against Messi in the final. So you're looking at a situation where a Maxi Falcone and a Tomas Aviles for Messi can really deliver, which means red card coming, penalty kick coming. Sam Surge is 100% going to win the Golden Boot Award because these guys would let Messi down anytime they possibly can. And then Bouanga obviously controlling his own destiny on that one. Scored again late on against Atlanta on Sunday Night Soccer. Probably could have scored 2 or 3. Definitely should have had an assist on a tap in for Son late in that game. It was a game that happened. I saw someone put that on Blue Sky. This is 90 minutes that did occur. It was a little bit tough to watch. It felt like, I don't want to say LAFC of old, but a team at LAFC, who's going to sit in, not really allow them to play, and the struggles at times to break teams down when it's not transition moments. But Bouanga, when he's on a heater like this, is capable of winning every competition, right? This now harkens back to LAFC Leagues Cup, LAFC MLS Cup in 2023, the appearance there, where it's like, if you are defensively stout and you have Bouanga on form like this, you can beat anyone, and it feels like he's back in there. And that doesn't even include talking about Son, who's playing at a really high level.
I agree, and I got distracted. I know that we should be talking about LAFC, and we will. Atlanta United had .08 expected goals against LAFC. They're 3 shots because I'm looking on Opta, so it's just going to be I don't know how long a meter is, but their closest shot was from like 27 meters. It's just a really funny
that's
shot.
That's a lot of meters.
Atlanta United, who spent more money than any team in MLS history before this season, just to remind you. And Jamal Tiare has clearly the starter over the league record signing. It's tough. Anyway, yeah, with LAFC, yeah, I agree with you in terms of you kind of would want to see them explode again against a bad team and against a team that's going to be sitting in. But they just did that. 3 goals against St. Louis, 4 against Salt Lake, 4 against Salt Lake. Those 2 things happened twice. I didn't just go Rain Man and repeat myself. 4 against San Jose. These 5 teams that they've played, they're not playing them in the playoffs. Right. So if they did, that would have been nice. But I get the 3 points, get out of there. Bouanga gets his goal, and we'll see what happens when they get to the playoffs. Because again, they're playing the last 3 games: Toronto, Austin, Colorado. They played San Diego at the end of August. That will end up being like
the last
10
playoff
games.
team. Yeah.
10 games previous to whatever they get to the playoffs. And yeah, like Austin will be in the playoffs, and maybe Colorado will be, probably not, like you said, but or Real Salt Lake during the stretch. Regardless, they haven't played what we would consider to be a good team in a while. So it is good. It's great to win all of these games, but I'm not going to sit here and be like, man, I'd feel a lot better if they won 3-0 against Atlanta, because ultimately we are never going to remember this game or think about it probably from whenever our podcast is done recording today.
Bouanga will miss 2 games. It's Toronto midweek, and then that Austin game on the weekend during the international break. He'll be with Gabon, who I believe have already clinched a spot, at least in a World Cup playoff qualifier, to get to an intercontinental qualifier. But they have the chance to jump. I've been going through the World Cup stuff. They have a chance to jump and clinch outright a World Cup spot. It would be the first in the nation's history. So he'll be away with that. And then they'll finish with the Colorado Rapids on the road in the final game. As we said, for the Rapids, it'll be slightly must win. For LAFC, well, they might be eliminated by then if both teams win their games in hand.
I like the turn of phrase.
LAFC right now 4th. So if they win one of these games in hand, they would jump to 3rd. If they win both, they have the potential to be first place in the West in their own destiny going into decision day. If you were to pick one of these 3 to win the boot, who do you think it is?
I'm going to lean Messi on this. Again, so Messi and Bouanga are tied on 24. No, I know. I think that the funniest outcome would be Surge doing it.
He's taking penalties.
Messi is up to 41 goal contributions this season. He's only the 2nd player in MLS history to do that, following that Carlos Vela season, which was, again, the best single season in MLS history. And yeah, this is a fun race, and these are 3 obviously really, really good players, and Bouanga, his heater over the last month or whatever it's been, has been really, really fun and really cool to watch as these races have heated up. And Messi is obviously, with those goal contributions, making the MVP less of a debate over Anders Dreyer as they fall out of the Shield race. I need to pivot and make it about myself, make it about us. For some reason, for our Golden Boot draft, we just decided not to do keepers, and Bouanga would have been on team Kalen and Tom. But you guys had to change the rules.
Like from last year?
We did that. We've done that every single year. We've done.
And did we not do it this year?
Yeah. And then when I was like, didn't we? And all of you guys were just like, what are you talking about? It's like, why are you pretending like I'm the one who's wrong? We've done this the same way every year. And then you look at me like I'm crazy for expecting that again.
Do we know where the standings are at there?
No. And
okay.
I don't want to know, because I don't feel a 3-peat's coming.
Tom's not going to win.
Or 4-peat. I don't know. I have so many trophies in the cabinet that, me and Kalen got complacent, and we enjoyed all of our successes too much. And congrats. Somebody else might win this year and enjoy it, because the trophy's going to stay in Brick, New Jersey for a long time.
Morgan says that Weeby's dominating. So.
And we didn't do a midseason redraft. Doyle got Messi last year.
Yeah. You could have gotten
Or
Andres
2 years
Linger.
ago. And Doyle did 2 years ago. Then he had Messi as a keeper. And then this
Yeah.
year we were like, no more keepers.
You could have had Andres Linger mid-season. You could have blown things up. You could have had Veld. You could have crushed from the mid-season draft going forward. You really got robbed on the opportunity for that one. There's a huge gap, by the way, from Serge down into the tie right now for fourth, which is Joveljic and MVP frontrunner Petar Musa, who, if he goes for 6 or 7 in the next 2 games, could have the chance to ascend. And Dallas does actually have,
and then you would ascend too.
100%. And Dallas actually does have the potential to get out of the wild card game. They still control their own destiny on that, which would be absolutely wild. We're going to talk MVPs. We're going to talk best 11s. We've got plenty of time to do it. And then, as Tom said, we're not supposed to put our ballots in until anything happens. So we have to wait until the last game of the season. But we've got like the best part of the year coming up. We've got playoffs. We've got decision day. We're going to have a ton of coverage here at SoccerWise and across Kickback. So stick where you are. Keep coming back. Tell other people to watch us. Tell other people to engage. And if you think people would enjoy this show or would like to yell at us, feel free to send them our way, and we would be happy to spread the umbrella a little bit wider. Quick, some national team talk before we get out of here. USMNTs, we will dig into more on Thursday, as I said, because the game's coming up. I know you and Joe talked about it when the roster released last Thursday, and I'm very excited for this camp. I'm really excited for the central midfield group, the James Sands, the Tanner Tessmans, the Aiden Morrises of the world, especially without Tyler Adams, which congrats to his family on the birth of his second child is why he missed this. But this is necessary. Like, you need a world outside of Tyler. Also, you probably still need a partner for Tyler in some setups and against some opponents. Here's a big chance for a lot of these players who have huge skill sets and then huge holes in their game as well to prove that they can be in that space. No, Johnny as well here. So which of those players can do enough in possession to be able to earn the spot in the team? And then I think at center back, really exciting. Mark McKenzie playing in a back 3 consistently. Cameron Carter-Vickers not, but has at times at Celtic. If that's what Pochettino's doing going forward, which of them fits in, I think is going to be really, really big. On the Canada side of things, terrible news around Moise Bombito. It is a tibia fracture. He was coming back from a tibia injury. And what's sad is last week, Jesse Marsh said, we have to be careful when he comes into Canada camp. He's coming off the wrist injury. He's coming off the tibia stress fracture. We have to be careful with him so he won't start both games. And he gets injured with his club in Nice. And he is a huge factor for this team. I've said it over and over again. He fits the system perfectly. If you're going to press high, you need guys who could defend more than one player at a time, who can cover ground, and he's comfortable stepping into midfield in possession. So it's a huge loss for them. And it comes with Alistair Johnston out. Fonzie still out, but they're hoping come back in November, and San Adekugbe out as well. So a bunch of big losses for Canada. And let's finish up with the U20s. They crushed New Caledonia in the first game. Don't come back in this building, New Caledonia. You were talking smack pregame. I heard it all the way across the ocean, and we won't have that in our house. It was a 9-1 game, I believe. Then the 3-0 mauling of France was what really triggered for a lot of people in the middle of the group stage. They automatically qualified out of that game, so they rotated against South Africa. They took the 1-0 lead. Then they lose 2-1. They sort of brought a good chunk of the starters in as subs that started out and then brought off the other starters as the game went along. I thought they dominated the game. I thought they pushed, but there were some clear mistakes defensively in the big moments. Transition. Boudry had some big saves, but also some saves he pushed back in front of players and was lucky that there weren't goals there. And I do think the cutting edge of this team in the attack still is not fully there. Like, you see the limitations at times on Cole Campbell's game. Really wants to come on that left foot over and over and over again. And you saw some of it with Zambrano as well, getting the start in this game. But I think Gozo was one of the names we sort of earmarked coming into this team, Tom. And I think he's performed at a really high level. Sekiris has played at a really high level as well. It feels like a lot of the guys you'd want this team to lean on have stepped up.
I totally agree. And Bengar Komaski obviously had the big game in the opener. He was somebody that has to be a leader of this team and has to be somebody driving the game. Yeah, just the win against France, and it wasn't, they ended up being late goals, but it wasn't a fluke. Like, that was a deserved, maybe not the exact 3-0 scoreline, but like, if there was a winner in that game, I think it was pretty clearly the United States. And that was well earned, and just what a nice moment. And so that's why I don't put a ton of stock into the loss against South Africa. First of all, South Africa are good. I just want to be clear we do this where,
shout out to Keon.
Like, fairly we'll look and be like, oh my God, we see France, we see Italy, like, we see the big countries, And you go like, oh, South Africa at U20s must not be as good as France or Italy or insert any like traditional powerhouse here, but like their generation breaking through is a really good one. And again, the United States rotated because they were already through. So
Yeah.
it would have been nice to win rather than to lose, but I don't like take anything away from the group stage because of that game, both with the context of where things sat, plus how good South Africa are.
Yeah. It was rotation across the team. So Kohler, who has started all the games at center back, came out of the team. Noah Cobb got an opportunity. Taha Bruin, Peyton Miller didn't start in this game. He's been really, really special. So there was a lot of shifts, especially in central midfield. I like Pedro Soma a lot. I like what I've seen from him in MLS. I like what I see from him at international. He is a tempo setter. He's not exactly a line breaker. And so that was one of the things I thought they were missing. And I've said this about Ben Ha since I've seen him play at the youth ranks. He is a world-class goal scorer in the most bizarre way. He is not a tempo setting central mid, and he is not a guy that dominates the game. And so he's one of the guys where if you take it Sekiris and Brooklyn Reigns out, he's not going to carry that load going forward. And I thought that was a bad setup for him. And again, it wasn't the most important thing because winning that game was not key to them. But I think you see the limitations in his game when he gets into a game like that where it should run through him. And that's not who he is, and that's not how he's set up. They'll now play Italy coming up in the next game. And so it'll be interesting to see coming out of the last game who earns their spot back, who is able to get the start. And this is a big opportunity. Like, we've had a couple of these youth national team setups where I don't think this is as consequential anymore to the forecast of where this national team is going and all of the players at this age group's careers. I said it last week or 2 weeks ago, whatever it was. Like, some of these players should be playing with their clubs because it's better for them. And a bunch of players who are eligible don't come into this anymore because it's not a FIFA date and it is more important for them to play for their clubs. And the U.S. is a young program, and not all these players are going to break through to the national team. But you need a little positivity in the group. And winning something, pushing into a quarterfinal, semifinal at a full FIFA level, even at the youth ranks, I think helps the USMNT, helps the feeling around the group. And I think this team's good enough. When you look at this team, I think you're looking at a team and what we've seen in the group stage where the floor is really high and the professionalism is really, really high from a lot of these guys because they have so many minutes under their belt. And then you do have the difference makers. You have the Peyton Millers, you have the Xavier Gozos, you have the Taha Bruins. And so the hope is that all of that elevates against this Italy team. That game's 3:30 p.m. Eastern time on Thursday. So we'll have coverage of you for that all across Kickback. And the potential to move on, I believe it would be Morocco. I don't know who the other team is that they would play in the next round, but that's who they would play if they won. If they had won against South Africa, by the way, they would be playing Colombia in the next round in Chile. So I don't know that that's a better situation than playing Italy in the next round. It is what it is. It's a World Cup, and like you're going to have to beat someone good. And this is a huge opportunity for these young players. But it's been fun to watch them so far. And I think it's been a really good showing for a lot of these young players. And it's probably been a good showing for a lot of their clubs who are like, you're interested? Like, let's get the old checkbook out and have some conversations. So it's going to be a big week coming up. We've got full national teams. We've got U20 World Cups. We've got some big playoff game potential games as well. And we'll have all your coverage here. So, Tom, it was good to be back with you.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you for covering for me. I heard that you were very excited about Yom Kippur and had a lot of fun with the Day of Atonement.
Can you make a ruling right now?
Sure.
Do I need to write an apology on my notes app and tweet it because I said because I asked the question, do you say Happy Yom Kippur?
Yeah.
I don't think I didn't even say that on the show because I tried to prepare. I still think that I should get a suspension.
No, you just say Happy New Year.
That's what I was like.
Listen, Tom, the year 5776, it's the year of Jackson Dart, and it's the year of apology. Tom, you're back. You're good. Don't worry about it. It's a special year coming up for all of us. But thank you for covering for me. Thank you to all of you for listening. Thank you to everyone who was on live chatting with us. Don't forget, we've got Kickback committee coming up. It's going to be a ton of preview around World Cup qualifying around the world. We've got our NWSL show coming up on Wednesday with a huge weekend of action. Louisville, maybe on their way to their first playoff appearance in the club's history, and so much more. So stick around, hit us up on socials, and we'll talk to you all again very, very soon.